A massive cow-like monster swung its axe. The man dodged the strike and studied the monster's movements, trying to guess what it would do next. He raised his right manipulator's magic sealing sword, planning to cancel the creature's magic. Since the monster had just used a powerful skill, he believed its HP must be running low. Ready to finish the fight, he unleashed his four-sword style and struck with several blades at once. In the end, he earned a solo victory. A boy then removed his VR device. To his surprise, 5,000 viewers had been watching him at the same time. He could hardly believe he had once again shown them the true power of the four-sword style. He began to think about what he might stream the following day. Just then, a notice arrived from the admins. It was an email sent to all players of Farlam World Online. Curious, the boy opened it, and his eyes widened in shock. The message announced that manipulators would soon be removed from the multi-blade swordsman class. That change meant the four-sword style would no longer exist for players who used it. The boy's cry of disbelief filled his quiet room late at night. Farlam World Online had more than 100 million total players. It was a game where people could join with friends to clear tower-like dungeons spread across the VR world. At that time, it stood as the most popular full-dive MMORPG. Later in the game, players noticed a well-known player named Hayate resting on a bench in the central plaza. He looked completely spaced out. Hayate was a high school student who played as the multi-blade swordsman and used the rare four-sword style. He was also a streamer with over 320,000 subscribers. Everyone quickly understood why he seemed drained. The game developers had announced that the four-sword style would be removed in the next update. Many players thought it was expected since the style was barely used anymore. The four-sword style required a special piece of mechanical arm equipment called a manipulator. Only the multi-blade swordsman class could use it, and equipping it allowed the player to fight with four swords at once. However, controlling a manipulator was extremely difficult. Hayate was the only player skilled enough to handle such a complex tool. At that moment, a girl entered the plaza and called out that she had finally found Hayate. She challenged him to a PvP battle, claiming it would be her turn to win. The girl was Elena, an archer who specialized in using a great bow. She was also a high school student in the same grade as Hayate and had an even bigger following, with more than 1.25 million subscribers on her channel. The crowd of players was shocked to see her. Elena was famous not only for her popularity but also for spending large amounts of money in the game to buy the strongest gear. Even so, her streams remained entertaining and fun to watch. Many rumors spread about her being the daughter of the Shinonoma Group, one of Japan's biggest financial families. To most people, she was considered a real-life gaming princess. Hayate glanced at her with tired eyes, still drained from the news about his style being removed. Elena, full of energy, tried to shake him back into focus, refusing to let him stay in his daze. The two went to a tavern where Elena asked if the manipulators were really being removed from the game. Hayate confirmed after asking one of the admins, and it seemed the decision was final. Elena thought it was a shame, but she also saw it as a chance to make Hayate weaker, which felt like a lucky break for her. Her remark made Hayate look down, so she quickly apologized. She then asked about his plans. Hayate explained that he intended to play the style to its fullest until the next game update, but he stopped when he mentioned what came after. Elena assumed he was quitting the game. She could not believe that a player who could rise to the top of the leaderboards with any class would quit so suddenly. She felt determined that she would not let him leave before she had the chance to beat him. Hayate told her she was giving him too much credit. Without the four-sword style, he believed he was nothing. Elena wondered why he was so attached to it. Hayate declared that the four-sword style was the greatest. It carried a storm of four blades striking in quick fury. It gave him the power to attack and defend at the same time. It had an overwhelming number of strikes. It was fun to use, and to him the logic was simple. Four swords were stronger than one. He also felt that using it made him look and feel cool. To him, it was the ultimate dream turned real, a true masterpiece. When he first started, the manipulators were so difficult to control that he could barely do anything with them. But he practiced every single day until he finally moved them exactly as he wanted. The moment he defeated a boss alone for the first time felt incredible. Every dungeon, every boss monster, and every stream he did was tied to the four-sword style. His entire journey in the game was built around it, and he could not imagine using another class. He only wanted to fight with his four swords. Elena felt bad and wanted to comfort Hayate by tapping his back, but she stopped herself. Her face grew warm as she tried to hold back her feelings. Out of frustration, she let out a loud cry and declared that they should form a party to challenge the newly added dungeon called the Tower of Sky. It was known as the hardest dungeon in the game, and only 13 parties had ever cleared it. She wanted them to conquer it together, just the two of them, and have his name engraved on the Conqueror's monument as proof that a player had beaten the toughest dungeon using the four-sword style. Hayate felt strangely moved by her determination. Elena quickly added that he should not misunderstand. because she was only helping since she happened to be available. Still, Hayate refused and explained that he had no plans of teaming up with anyone. His words shocked Elena, and she angrily argued that she would not be a burden because she was also a top-ranking player. Hayate tried to explain that her skill was not the issue, but before he could finish, Elena tugged gently at his shirt. She quietly insisted that they clear the dungeon just this once and asked for a single lasting memory together. To his own surprise, Hayate finally agreed. Elena's face brightened and she celebrated by happily jumping in place. She reminded him not to space out and urged him to keep moving forward. Hayate realized she was right. There was no sense in staying stuck in gloom. He slapped his cheeks and reminded himself to enjoy the journey until the very end. Later at the Tower of Sky, groups of players complained about how hard the dungeon was. Even with a full rate of 16, they were still stuck on the 4th floor. Hayate and Elena walked past them and entered the dungeon. The failed group felt shocked and confused. They could not believe only 2 people went in, thinking the pair had a death wish. Many doubted it was possible since even the 1st floor usually needed at least 10 players to clear. The 1st floor quickly filled with monsters. Hayate, using his 4-sword style, cut down everything in his way with ease. A few enemies slipped past him, but Elena stayed ready and shot them down with her arrows. Hayate told her to let him handle the front, while also pointing out 3 enemies waiting on the upper floor, 2 guarding the rear, and a caster hiding behind a pillar. Elena realized how sharp his awareness was. He acted as both attacker and defender for a role meant for 10 players, all while making perfect tactical choices. She also noticed how he set up openings for her to fight without trouble. She had never synced this easily with anyone before. Hayate truly fought on another level. Still, Elena was no one to underestimate since she could hold her ground just as well. The 2 eventually paused after clearing the 6th floor. Hayate complained that the run felt too easy since they had not even used any of their best items. Elena mentioned that she thought Hayate would struggle with teamwork since he always played solo. She wanted to know why he insisted on going alone since playing with a group had many advantages. Hayate only gave her a silent look, so she stopped expecting an answer. Still, she wanted him to admit that playing with someone else and clearing a dungeon together was also a good feeling. Hayate realized Elena was right. If he had taken on the dungeon alone, he would have struggled badly. The only reason they were moving smoothly through the floors was because of Elena's skill. For the first time, he truly felt that having a partner was a good thing. The 2 pressed on with their journey. Along the way, they discovered treasure chests and admired some scenic views. They also collected rare minerals but were sometimes caught in hidden traps. Even with those setbacks, they still enjoyed the adventure together. Eventually, they reached the boss room and ended their stream. They had no information about the creature waiting inside, yet both were ready for the challenge. Since they could not settle things with a duel, Elena suggested a competition instead. The rule was simple. Whoever landed the final blow on the boss's core would be the winner. The loser would have to grant 1 wish to the victor. If Hayate won, Elena promised she would do anything. If Elena won, her wish was for Hayate not to quit the game. He was surprised at her request, but he agreed without hesitation. The 2 prepared themselves for a race to see who could bring down the monster first. Since it was already agreed, they went inside to face the boss monster. At first, the creature looked like a lifeless statue, but then it suddenly began to move. This was the dungeon's boss, Tiamatena. The monster let out a loud scream that marked the start of the battle. Hayate charged forward right away. The monster swung its tentacles to strike, but Hayate sliced through them with ease, almost like cutting soft food. Then the monster began chanting. Hayate sensed danger and jumped just in time to avoid sharp spears that shot out from the ground. More tentacles followed, aiming to trap him. He was caught off guard but still managed to dodge while striking back. Afterward, he returned to Elena's side and noted how quick the monster's attacks were. Elena decided she would not hold back. She had planned to reveal her new weapons in their next PvP match, but now she had no choice. 8 mechanical guns appeared around her. Hayate was shocked to see so many gambits at once and realized she must have spent a fortune on them. Elena activated the weapons and they opened fire on the monster. The boss was overwhelmed by the constant blasts. These gambits were top tier, strong enough to take down even a curse dragon in 1 strike. Elena warned Hayate to stay sharp or she might end the fight alone. Enraged by the heavy fire, the boss monster screamed again. The sound was so powerful that it left both players nearly deaf. Seizing the chance, the monster launched another wave of tentacle attacks, forcing Hayate and Elena to defend themselves. After the assault, the monster began chanting once more. Hayate sensed something massive was about to happen. Elena reminded him that if they took the hit, they would be wiped out instantly. A storm of lightning bolts then rained down on them. As they stayed at a distance, the boss monster suddenly changed its form. It lowered its hands from its chest and revealed its eyes. Hayate checked if Elena was still alive, and she was, but she knew things were not fine at all. Without her divine protection skill, she would have already died more than once. She also noticed that the monster's speed and attack power kept increasing after its transformation. She realized the monster grew stronger as time passed. Its tentacles blocked every arrow she fired, making it impossible to reach the main body. All she could do was keep dodging to survive. There was not even the smallest opening for a counterattack. If they let time slip away, the monster might change forms again, and the fight would become even harder. While Elena considered taking the risk of going all in, Hayate prepared himself in a way that caught her off guard. In the middle of such danger, he seemed calm and confident. He switched his swords, even the ones carried by his manipulator. When the weapons appeared, Elena realized they were the legendary swords of the Black Dragon Granveld, and he had 4 of them. The sight made her wonder how much effort and resources he had poured into getting such rare weapons. Facing the monster head-on, Hayate decided it was finally time to reveal his true power. He had never shown these swords in streams or PvP battles before. Now he unleashed them to display what they could truly do. He used his own Hayate-style 4-sword secret art called Oboro. As he crouched, the manipulators on his back along with the 2 black swords suddenly vanished. Elena's eyes went wide with shock as she tried to understand why and how the manipulators disappeared. At that moment, the monster attacked with its tentacles to strike down Hayate, who was still crouching. Yet the tentacles were cut apart the instant they came close to him. Elena realized that the manipulators had not vanished at all. They had only become impossible to notice because Hayate moved them at such a speed that no eye could follow. Hayate knew one mistake in control would leave him badly hurt or cause the swords to clash and break. It was never about swinging carelessly. From first learning the idea to finally mastering it, the training had taken him more than a year. This was his strongest defensive skill. Hayate focused on blocking every strike from the monster so Elena could unleash her power. He kept the monster busy, circling around it while parrying each strike from the many tentacles. Elena shot arrows from her great bow and launched her gambits without pause, driving the beast back step by step. She then used a powerful skill that created a massive arrow of energy. When she fired, it hit the monster's forehead and cracked the skin, revealing its glowing core. The monster tried to shield itself with a magical barrier, but Hayate pressed forward. With his Oboro technique and steady control of his 4-sword style, he pushed through until the barrier shattered. He struck straight at the exposed core. The blow split it apart and the monster collapsed in defeat. Elena's face lit up as the core broke, for the battle was finally over. Together, they had cleared the dungeon. The ancient monolith at the end of the chamber glowed and carved their names into its surface as the 14th Conquerors. To Elena, this proved the 4-sword style had overcome the hardest challenge of the game. Hayate only smiled faintly, for he no longer cared about such claims. He decided it was the right time to step away. This final victory was the last memory he wished to carry from the game. He gave Elena his thanks for sharing this adventure. She accepted it with a quiet smile, not trying to stop him. Hayate then walked to the open field beyond the dungeon and stood still, watching the wide horizon. From deep within, he shouted his thanks to the game that had given him so many moments before this final farewell. That night, Hayate lay down on his bed in the real world. He thought about whether his viewers would feel sad if he said he was retiring. He knew he had to thank the game admins for helping him get sponsors. He also needed to discuss his future after graduation with his mother, since most of his life had only been about game streaming. If he began studying now, he could still enter a local college. But beyond that, he could not picture anything, and he let out a long, heavy sigh. Even so, playing Echo had always been fun for him. Then a strange voice echoed in his mind, speaking about some kind of update starting in the world. Hayate quickly sat up as the ground shook like an earthquake. His books and chair crashed to the floor. He crouched under his computer table until the shaking ended. Yet what troubled him more was the mysterious announcement that rang in his head. When he opened the window to look outside, he spotted a shape in the distance. It looked very familiar to him. It was clearly a tower-like dungeon from the game Echo. He could hardly believe his eyes. Despite his confusion, his heart pounded with excitement. The feeling inside him was almost the same as when he first played FWO. There was no mistaking it. The tall structure that rose in the middle of the city was clearly a tower-type dungeon, the same kind Hayate had just seen in the game he played earlier. He might have been dreaming or even hallucinating, but before those thoughts could settle, his body had already reacted. He ran with excitement toward the tower. Soon after, news reports revealed that this strange event was not limited to Japan. Similar towers had appeared at the same time in other countries around the world. Each tower carried the same design as the ones from the full-dive game FWO, operated by GG Corporation. When asked, the CEO of GG, Mr. Hashimoto, denied having any involvement. In Japan alone, more than 10 towers had been confirmed. Even without understanding the cause and while confusion spread, a video suddenly went viral online. In the video, a woman appeared and greeted all people of Earth. She introduced herself as the creator god Megumi. She explained that she knew everyone was shocked by the towers and openly declared that she was the one who had made them appear. She claimed she heard that humans loved games and decided they would enjoy having dungeons in real life as well. Her request was for people to work together and try their best to conquer these dungeons. She told them to face the truth that the real world was often filled with boring duties like work and school, while inside dungeons such dull things did not exist. Instead, she said the towers were filled with exciting challenges and rewards. She called everyone future heroes, and encouraged them to climb to the highest floor to claim the dreams and hopes that waited above. The video spread quickly. People who watched it grew excited and rushed toward the towers, even as soldiers tried to hold them back. The goddess also revealed that actions inside the dungeons would be shown on a streaming site. She urged everyone to follow the broadcast and stay connected for future updates. People rushed into the tower as a system-like voice welcomed them to the Tower of Black, which looked exactly like the one in the game. Everyone was asked to choose a combat class before moving forward. After that, they were told to pass through the door, with a final wish for the gods' protection on their journey. Inside, the same monsters from the game appeared, but they quickly overpowered the people who entered. Most of them were amateurs who could not handle swords or cast spells. A heavy-set gamer tried to take control by saying that he had played EO for 10,000 hours, but even he was taken down in seconds by a simple goblin. Some of the players began to doubt the goddess's words, wondering how this disaster matched the dreams and hopes she had promised. At the same time in the United States, special forces stormed the dungeon to deal with it themselves. They fired powerful weapons, yet their bullets had no effect. Instead of dying, some monsters grew larger the more they were shot, and they charged forward to tear through the soldiers. From the back lines, the rear squad could only hear the last screams of their comrades. Confusion spread as no one understood what was happening. Elsewhere, a gamer streamed the chaos to the world. He described it as a war zone and confirmed that the battles inside were being broadcast live. He even laughed at the downfall of the American soldiers, mocking them as beginners. He explained that they clearly had no idea how to fight creatures like trolls. He then argued that gamers failed because they lacked physical strength, while soldiers failed because they lacked game knowledge. According to him, one needed both real-world skill and game understanding to clear the dungeons. He added that some gamers might train their bodies in the gym, but swinging an actual sword against a goblin was something completely different. Just then, he saw someone pushing through the dungeon. It was Hayate, moving with energy as he swung his 4 swords and cut down the monsters that stood in his way. He seemed excited to be inside the dungeon, and kept defeating enemies one after another without showing any sign of slowing down. A boy who had been watching wondered who this fighter was. After looking closer, he finally recognized Hayate's unique movements and his 4-sword style. A lurking viewer quickly confirmed it was Hayate, and soon people began calling him insane for the way he fought. Many players of FWO were shocked to see that his real face was exactly the same as his in-game avatar. They could hardly believe they were seeing Hayate in person. Since no one else used the 4-sword style, there was no doubt it was really him. Some people thought they might be watching computer-generated animation, but the players knew it was the real Hayate. They were stunned that he was this powerful even in real life. The players spread the news that Hayate had 2.32 million subscribers as a streamer, and held the rank of 132nd worldwide. He was the only streamer able to fully master the 4-sword style, something nobody else could handle. At that time, he stood as the strongest solo player in Japan, known everywhere as Hayate the 4-sword style. A troll tried to attack him, but Hayate moved quickly and dodged with perfect timing. Everyone watching was impressed at how he slipped away from the strike by only the smallest margin. His speed and reflexes were far beyond normal. Another viewer reminded others that Hayate had once streamed a 10,000 swing endurance challenge and uploaded videos of himself performing acrobatics. He had been training his body in real life with complete seriousness, proving he was a true 4-sword style fanatic. Hayate kept dodging the troll's attacks with ease before ending the fight by defeating it. People could hardly accept that he had been physically training for a video game, calling him a level of crazy they had never seen before. Afterward, Hayate picked up a dropped item, a set of iron swords. Just as in the game, he upgraded the item all the way to its highest level. The viewers were stunned when they realized he had spent 300,000 yen in real money. They also saw that he did not notice he was no longer inside the game world, and could not even see their comments. Soon after, Hayate reached the 10th floor with equipment he had collected along the way. For now, he believed it was good enough to continue. The viewers were shocked that he had already reached the boss room. They remembered that even the US Special Forces had been forced to retreat at the 7th floor. As far as they knew, the boss of the Tower of Black was a massive stone dragon. Hayate faced the monster as it showed its size and roared across the chamber. Even through the screen, some viewers felt the weight of its presence. Many doubted Hayate could bring it down alone. The dragon struck first, but Hayate moved quickly and dodged. His armor was only a mix of gear he had picked up along the way, and if he took even one hit, it would have been over. But he had cleared the Tower of Black countless times in the game, and he had memorized every move the stone dragon could use. The beast charged forward, yet Hayate avoided the rush that followed its opening attack. He then sidestepped the heavy tail swipe that came next. When the foreleg slammed down, Hayate knew it was his chance. He rushed in and struck the leg with precision. Seeing the dragon recoil in pain, he felt relief that it worked exactly as it did in the game. With his stronger weapons that had higher attack power, his confidence grew. The monster bit toward him, but Hayate dodged to the right and landed a double strike. When the left claw swept across, he blocked with the manipulator and delivered a sharp blow to the head. Since he could not withstand a direct magic blast, he braced himself with the manipulator, pushed hard off the ground, and leapt high to escape the strike. The fight went on as Hayate carefully reviewed the attack patterns, countering each move one after another. The viewers could hardly believe what they saw. He was dominating the monster, and all of this was happening with his real body. To many, it no longer seemed possible that he was just human. Hayate remembered the stone dragon would unleash its ultimate attack once its health dropped below 10%, so he chipped away at its strength until it was right at that point, then prepared to end it in one decisive blow. Using the manipulator, he propelled himself high into the air. Everyone watching held their breath as he came down with perfect aim. His strike landed cleanly on the dragon's head, and the battle was finally over. The stone dragon collapsed, defeated. The viewers could not believe he had managed to solo the boss. It was the first ever real-world dungeon clear, a historic moment. From that day, they called him a legend and the greatest of all time. Wanting to see more, they quickly subscribed to the goddess's channel. After seeing the quest complete screen, Hayate remembered how he had already decided to leave no regrets about FWO. Yet in the end, he still wanted to keep fighting with the four-sword style. A system-like voice soon declared that the Tower of Black had been conquered and that the Tier 2 dungeon, the Tower of Spring, was now unlocked. When Hayate stepped out of the Tower of Black, he noticed another tower nearby. He realized it followed the same pattern as the game, where a new tower appeared once one was cleared. This made him understand that he could keep on fighting. News of Hayate's dungeon clear spread quickly across the world. He caught the attention of the US Special Forces, leaders of the Japanese government, wealthy businessmen, and even the President of the United States. In a world filled with mysterious dungeons and dangerous monsters, a single boy had cleared one with unbelievable ease. Hayate, however, stayed blissfully unaware of the great attention now focused on him. Meanwhile, the goddess was stunned that the tower had already been cleared. She could not believe it since she had designed it to be extremely difficult. She worried that everyone might become bored and dismiss her creation as an easy game. Unsure of what to do, she turned to a man named Sadaharu, a former chief programmer who now served as her dungeon design lead. She asked him for help, fearing that humans would stop finding her dungeons fun or challenging. Sadaharu, however, told her not to disturb him since he was busy working on the Tier 3 dungeons. But the goddess insisted, ordering him to release the test they had prepared, one involving a boss monster with cheat-like stats. Shocked, Sadaharu asked if she really meant the monsters reserved for the Tier 5 dungeons, reminding her that he had not finished balancing them yet. The goddess, however, had already made up her mind. She wanted to raise the difficulty to make the dungeons more exciting for everyone. Sadaharu thought something was wrong with her reasoning. He reminded her that he had already warned her about this. Soon after, a monster profile appeared on his screen. Soon after, Hayate came out of the dungeon and said it was time to move to the next one. People quickly noticed him and gathered around. Many of them came from different media companies and wanted to get his story. Hayate felt confused and caught off guard as everyone rushed him with questions. He tried to brush them off and said he needed to go to the next dungeon. At that moment, one of the interviewers was pulled aside by a tall man in a suit. The interviewer was about to get angry but stopped after noticing the crest on the man's clothing. More suited men soon formed a circle around Hayate, keeping the reporters away. Hayate grew uneasy and wondered what was going on. Then a woman arrived, scolding him for jumping into danger without thinking first. Her sharp tone revealed that she was Elena. She ordered her men to secure Hayate. The suited guards tied him up and carried him to their car. Hayate struggled and demanded to know what she was doing, but Elena only told him that answers would come later. While they were on the road, Elena explained that the Shinonome group would take custody of him. Hayate asked what she meant, and she showed him clips of his stream that had gone viral. To his shock, he realized that the dungeon run had been broadcasted to the world and had already reached over 100 million views. Elena explained that politicians and corporations were now making their moves, eager to profit from the rare resources and items found in the dungeons. Right now, Hayate was seen as a golden goose. He had cleared a dungeon that even the US Special Forces had failed to defeat, and powerful people wanted to use his strength for themselves. Elena told him not to get the wrong idea. She said she only happened to be nearby and did not come for him out of worry. She added that he would stay at her family's mansion for the time being, with his mother's permission, since he needed to lay low until the storm passed. Hayate shouted that he wanted to head straight to the next dungeon, but she refused. Even inside the car, he kept resisting, so Elena finally ordered her guard to tase him. Soon after, they finally arrived at Elena's home, where many maids greeted them. Hayate wondered how many people worked there, and Elena said it was around 100 or so. The head maid, Saori, appeared and welcomed them. Elena introduced her to Hayate and explained that he could ask Saori for help if he needed anything. Saori mentioned that her young mistress often spoke about Hayate with a happy look. Elena quickly stopped her and told her to just show Hayate to his room instead of saying more. Suddenly, a man appeared and called out Elena's real name, Reina. He said he heard she was bringing a friend, but he did not expect it to be a boy. The man was Nobutaka, Elena's father, and the leader of the Shinonome group. He shouted that he would never allow a boy to live under the same roof as his daughter. Elena told Hayate that this was her father. Nobutaka then confronted him and asked how he was connected to his daughter. Hayate explained that they were only friends from a game. Nobutaka demanded to know if he had done anything strange to her and warned him that he had the power to crush him through politics and business. Before he could say more, Nobutaka was struck and fell unconscious. Hayate was stunned to see Elena had knocked her father out with a vase. Elena sighed at the sight of him lying on the floor and told Saori to take him to his room. Without hesitation, Saori dragged him away. Elena then decided to guide Hayate to his room herself. She noticed the uneasy look on his face, and Hayate thought to himself that he should never anger Elena. 3 days had already passed since the appearance of the dungeons, and hospital beds were completely filled with the injured. A 31-year-old man who loved games ended up with several stitches and swore never to step into a dungeon again. Many younger people said no one would dare enter after seeing the terrifying streams online. The Japanese government even created the Dungeon Countermeasures Office and announced that every tower was off-limits. An expert explained that the dungeons might hold unknown resources or even powerful artifacts that could help the economy grow. Still, they were compared to Pandora's box, and trying to secure what was inside might not be safe. For the moment, the safest choice was to avoid them. When the goddess heard this, she grew upset. She could not believe no one had entered her dungeons for 3 days. She turned to Sadaharu crying about the lack of challengers. Sadaharu thought it was natural. He admitted he was only a programmer and not someone skilled in drawing people in, but he knew something about game design. He suggested that dungeons should include rewards, such as special treasures for clearing them, or even meaningful goals for those who failed. He explained that players were not inspired by vague orders to go clear this or that. They needed real reasons to risk entering. The goddess listened carefully and then suddenly came up with a new plan. She believed it was brilliant and felt sure it would bring people back into her dungeons. Every time she had one of these ideas, it usually ended in disaster, but Sadaharu did not mind. Meanwhile, Hayate quietly watched the white tower that stood far on the horizon. He thought about whether he should still enter the dungeons. He believed he could not just walk freely around town while using the four-sword style, especially since the government had already made the towers off-limits. He admitted he did not really understand much about the dungeon resources or the government task forces. All he truly wanted was to fight with his four-sword style. Elena seemed worried, but she reminded him of her identity. She was the only heiress of one of Japan's largest financial groups, the Shinonome Group. With their power, she believed it would be easy to arrange clearance for Hayate to enter a dungeon. She recalled how painful it was for her to see him when it was announced that the four-sword style would be removed from the game. But when the dungeons suddenly appeared, she saw him fighting inside them with a wide smile on his face. To her, that was proof he was at his very best when using his style. She thought he could fight as much as he wanted, but for now, he had to keep a low profile so he would not draw too much attention. She insisted he behave for the time being. Hayate gave her a smile and expressed his gratitude. He remembered hearing from the head maid that Elena even went as far as trying to negotiate with the game administrators when the four-sword style was about to be abolished. Elena grew embarrassed when he thought about it, and she tried to deny the story. He knew it was true though, and guessed the maid had told him everything. He remembered how Elena often challenged him in battles and called him an idiot, which once made him think she disliked him. Yet now she gave him a place to stay and had even invited him into a dungeon before just to lift his spirits. Hayate was grateful for the way she always looked after him, and he admitted that without her, he would likely be a complete mess. Elena blushed and struggled to find the right words. She finally shouted that she hated him, but she explained that what she truly hated was the way he spoke, since his words often caused others to misunderstand him. Hayate felt hurt when he thought she hated him for real. Elena tried to correct herself and went quiet as she searched for honest words. She then reminded him about their bet, where the loser had to follow the winner's request. She asked if he had already decided what he wanted. He had completely forgotten about it. Yet he also felt that asking for something now would make it seem like he was taking advantage of her after all she had done. Elena reminded him that the request could be anything, and she promised she would do it no matter what. She also admitted she was thankful to him. As the only heiress of the Shinonome family, she carried a heavy burden of pressure from everyone around her. To her, friendship felt false and her whole world seemed dull, but slowly her days began to brighten. She had found a place where she could truly be herself. Because Hayate was there, she had finally... Her words ended suddenly as she vanished, leaving only her clothes behind, as if she had been teleported away. Hayate stood in shock as he watched her clothes fall to the ground. He looked around, still confused, wondering where Elena had gone. At that moment, Saori fell to the floor, shaken, and admitted she had just seen her young mistress disappear. A system-like voice then echoed in their minds and declared that a special event had begun. 180 individuals had been marked as clear rewards. Hayate felt lost as he tried to understand what was happening. An event like this had never appeared in the game before, and he could not make sense of what was happening right now. Hayate heard the sudden announcement right after Elena disappeared. He wondered what was truly happening. Soon after, Saori told him that something strange had appeared on the streaming site. On the livestream, the goddess showed up and greeted everyone. She said it had already been 3 days, yet nobody had entered her dungeons, which made her feel sad. Because of that, she prepared a special event to make everyone excited to join again. She revealed people trapped inside glowing crystals, which left the viewers stunned. The goddess explained that the ones inside were famous actors, idols, children of wealthy families, athletes, streamers, and brilliant creators. In short, she had taken many well-known celebrities. She reminded the viewers that the oldest and most familiar story in video games was saving a kidnapped princess. She believed everyone enjoyed that kind of challenge, so she urged them to defeat her dungeons in order to win the return of these captured people. Among the ones inside was Elena herself. Hayate was shocked, while Saori quickly made a call. The goddess then explained that she had turned the captured people into prizes for clearing the Tier 2 dungeon called the Tower of Spring. She revealed there were 180 towers of spring around the world, with one person locked inside each one. Only the very first group to clear a tower would receive the reward, making it a race to be the fastest. After her announcement, she wished everyone luck and reminded them not to forget to subscribe to her channel. Hayate could not believe what he had just seen. Elena had been turned into a reward for clearing a dungeon. He asked Saori if they could find out which tower Elena was in, and she confirmed that her young mistress was held in the Kanto region, inside the Tower of Spring, standing in front of the Shibuya Scramble Crossing. At that moment, Elena's father, Nobutaka, walked in and asked if his daughter had truly vanished. Seeing only Hayate and Saori there, he already sensed the truth. Hayate then asked him to contact their government connections and request permission to enter the dungeon. With firm resolve, he declared that he would go and rescue Elena. News spread quickly that captured people were being used as dungeon clear rewards, and among them were 18 people from Japan. One man cried out that his son had disappeared like a bubble. Fear and unease grew as people realized the world was falling into chaos because of a twisted goddess. The President of the United States, filled with worry, called it an act of international terrorism. He promised to take action, rescue the hostages, and punish whoever was behind it. News reporters questioned if his own daughter was among the captives. Meanwhile, people online reacted in different ways. Some angry fans hurled insults at the goddess, while others pleaded for the return of their favorite idol. A wealthy businessman even offered $10 million for the safe return of his kidnapped daughter. That offer drove many people, especially experienced MMO players, to rush into the dangerous dungeons. Watching all of this unfold, the goddess felt pleased. She declared the plan a success and eagerly waited to see who would be the first to clear a dungeon. Not long after, Hayate and his group arrived at Shibuya's Tower of Spring. Escorted by the Shinonome group, Hayate stepped forward with confidence. The moment he entered, everyone online noticed through the goddess's streaming site. Viewers felt a mix of excitement and confusion. They were thrilled because it had been 3 days since they last saw him, and they wanted to witness what amazing skills he would show. At the same time, they were puzzled since all dungeons were supposed to be sealed. In the end, most believed he entered with the goal of saving a hostage. As soon as Hayate crossed the dungeon's threshold, a flood of monsters appeared before him. Without hesitation, he tore through the swarm with his four-sword style. The audience gasped in awe when he wiped out the entire horde in an instant. Hayate reminded himself that there was no time to waste. He vowed to finish the dungeon using the fastest path possible. Hayate saw another wave of monsters rushing toward him. He focused and cut them down in an instant with his four-sword style. The crowd stood in silence, amazed at what they had just seen. After the battle, the fishman monsters left behind a rare weapon called the Dagger of Water. Many players were surprised by the drop, yet they were even more shocked when Hayate ignored it and kept moving forward. One viewer noticed that Hayate was ignoring every reward. showing a risky way of playing that placed speed above everything else. This was not the same Hayate he once knew, and he wondered what had changed in him. Earlier, Nobute had thanked Hayate for agreeing to save his daughter. He also told him not to push himself too much and suggested resting before entering the dungeon the following day. Hayate reminded him of the goddess's words that it was first come, first served. If another player cleared the dungeon and asked for Reina, they would take her. Since 3 days had already passed since the dungeons appeared, Hayate believed that another skilled player might already be close to finishing one. If that happened, it could end in something even worse than a kidnapping. Still, that did not matter to him. He could not stay still while Elena was trapped inside. He believed she had to be rescued as quickly as possible. Outside the dungeon, Nobutake felt guilty for not taking responsibility as Reina's father to save her. Saori told him that they should place their faith in Hayate for now. She checked the game records and found that the Tower of Spring usually took about 15 hours to clear. Nobutake was confused about what she meant. Saori explained that even though players often stopped to farm for better equipment, this dungeon had a water attribute. To craft weapons that could counter it, like grass or lightning types, one would need to spend a lot of time gathering materials. Because of that, Hayate chose the faster way, which was to fight through with only his iron sword. This was why he ignored item drops and equipment upgrades. Nobutake understood that Hayate had his own strategy, but he still wondered why Saori knew so much about the game. She said it was her duty to review the young mistress's past streams. Inside the tower's 4th floor, more waves of monsters appeared. Saori explained that this stage was a monster house, a place where players had to fight through a huge horde while moving near the shore of a wide spring. Normally, a full party of 4 was required to clear this floor. Nobutake grew worried for Hayate, but Saori said there was a special trick for it. Hayate ignored the monsters and dashed straight toward the spring. An experienced player would recognize what he was doing. Without hesitation, Hayate leapt toward the water. A monster rose from the spring and he landed on its head. Nobutake realized Hayate was using the monsters as stepping stones. Saori explained that by jumping across the monsters themselves, a player could create the fastest path across the spring. This technique was called the spring shortcut. Hayate skillfully crossed the surface by hopping on their heads one after another. Some players thought it was reckless since one slip would make him monster food. Saori explained that even top players only had about a 60% success rate. The method demanded calm judgment when leaping over shaky footholds and required precise control. Still, if Hayate succeeded, he could finish the 4th floor, which normally took an hour in only 10 minutes. Just then, a giant octopus appeared without warning. Everyone watching felt shocked, but Hayate stayed calm. He used the octopus's legs as steps and climbed quickly. Reaching the top of its soft head, he pushed off and sprang forward. He landed cleanly on the other side of the spring. The others could not believe that Hayate moved without a single mistake. They felt unsure if they should be worried or relieved while watching him. Some even thought nothing could slow him down at that point. Saori later reported that Hayate had cleared the 4th floor in only 1 hour and 46 minutes. She predicted he could reach the boss monster in about 5 hours. Nobutake was stunned by Hayate's speed. He had expected no less from him and silently wished for his daughter's safety. Saori, however, pointed out that if Hayate kept up his pace, he could reach even greater results. Hayate soon arrived at the 7th floor where the mid-boss monster Leviathan was supposed to appear. Still, he felt confident since his progress had been flawless, and he already knew the creature's attacks and weaknesses by heart. Believing he could win, he stepped into the boss room. To his surprise, the room was empty. He glanced around, unsure of what was happening. As he moved forward, the ground rippled like the surface of a lake. Suddenly, something appeared behind him. Hayate's quick senses put him on guard, but instead of the Leviathan, a humanoid foe stood before him, armed with the 4 swords. Hayate wondered what was happening. In front of him stood a humanoid using the 4-sword style. Even the other players watching the stream, who were already experienced, felt confused. There was something eerie about what they were seeing. Instead of the expected giant sea monster, it turned out to be a humanoid robot. No one could figure out what it really was. At the same time, the goddess asked Sadaharu about the strange figure. He explained that it was a special enemy built from data that copied the movements of a certain 4-sword style user back in the EO game. The company had collected his data to improve the manipulator's controls, then created the robot based on that. The goddess worried it might lose, but Sadaharu was certain it would not. He claimed that this robot had been made with stats even higher than a level 5 dungeon boss. The humanoid robot raised its swords into a stance. Every player watching instantly recognized it. Hayate saw that it was exactly the same stance he himself used. The 2 fighters stayed still for a short moment as if measuring each other. Then both moved at the same time and clashed. Their swords struck again and again in a fast exchange. 8 blades spun and cut across the battlefield at high speed. Hayate spotted an opening and tried to use one of his techniques, but the robot quickly countered with the same move. The shock spread among the players watching. One of them realized that the robot was copying Hayate's movements and fighting with identical attacks. The others grew uneasy since this was an enemy no one had seen before or had any information about. Nothing like it had ever appeared in the old game. They guessed it might be a monster that copied whoever challenged it. Since the battle was in a water dungeon, they even thought it could be a reflection of the player in the water. But if it was not a doppelganger, the situation was far worse. That would mean the mid-boss itself was a permanent fake version of Hayate. Everyone froze in shock at the thought. If that was true, each attempt to save a hostage would force them to fight another Hayate. No one believed it was possible to win against a monster built on Hayate's playstyle. Hayate kept struggling and everyone noticed it. The crowd grew anxious as they doubted if he could win. By skills alone, it looked like an even match. Yet Hayate kept getting pushed back. One of the players pointed out that the difference came from their gear. Their equipment was on completely different levels. Hayate's weapons were only random pieces he had gathered from the last dungeon. The robot, however, carried weapons that came from level 5 dungeons, or even higher. In this game there was no such thing as experience points, so combat power depended only on the strength of one's gear. To make matters worse, the robot's manipulator was a third-generation model that reacted 500 milliseconds faster than Hayate's. At that speed, even half a second of delay could mean death. Another player reminded everyone that Hayate had sprinted the whole way here, so he was likely exhausted already. From the start, this was never a fair fight. The robot pressed harder, breaking one of Hayate's swords and cutting across his chest. The viewers could clearly see that the odds were completely against him. Hayate was thrown back but forced himself to stand even while bleeding. Many could not believe he was losing. Some began blaming the goddess and even told him to quit. Yet once someone entered a mid-boss room, the doors would stay locked until the boss was beaten or the player died. They warned that he would not survive if he kept fighting. Even Saori and Nobutake looked worried. Meanwhile, the goddess cheered with excitement. She admired how strong the robot was. Sadaharu was surprised that someone had reached the mid-boss already. The goddess invited him to watch, but he said he needed to stay focused on coding. She explained that the chat was overflowing with complaints, though she believed a powerful enemy should thrill the players. Sadaharu replied that the anger was expected, since she had basically given the power of a top ranker to a monster and armed it with endgame gear. He added that only the most hardcore players would enjoy fighting something built with such unfair strength. Even so, Hayate stood again with a faint smile on his face. The robot slowly moved toward Hayate, who was still catching his breath. Another player pointed out how unfair the enemy seemed since it carried Hayate's own moves and equipment, which were already at tier 5 or higher. The rest wondered if it was even right to keep streaming, because Hayate was actually bleeding in real life. They could not believe what the goddess had done. They complained that she did not even understand how to balance a game, and they thought there was no way for Hayate to win against such an opponent. Still, one of the experienced players thought differently. He believed it was too soon to give up and told them to notice Hayate's face. Everyone could see that he was smiling. They realized that Hayate still had a hidden plan and had not given up. The only thing they could do at that moment was to support him, and believe that he would not lose no matter what. Hayate then took a deep breath and lowered his body, which left everyone confused. They felt worried because he stopped moving right in front of the enemy. Some assumed that he had already given up. The robot noticed this opening and quickly charged forward. The viewers grew restless as they watched Hayate remain still. They wanted him to focus and fight back. Just as the robot closed in, Hayate suddenly opened his eyes and leaned backward to avoid the strike. This shocked the crowd. He kept dodging the incoming blows, swaying his body left and right while stepping back. The players were stunned as Hayate avoided all 4 blades slashing at him with great speed. Seizing the moment, he ducked and swung his broken sword at the robot, striking its side. The audience could hardly believe he managed to counter. They did not know how he pulled it off, but they realized that Hayate had finally awakened. The monster then backed away for a short while. Hayate finally realized something after the last attack he took. If the robot had moved just half a step closer, it could have finished him, but it failed. He noticed that the robot's movements were the same as his own from a year ago. The viewers then realized the same thing. They saw that the robot was not copying the present Hayate, but instead was modeled after his past self, during his old gaming days. Hayate understood that he had finally grasped the flow of the fight. He believed it did not matter if the enemy had the best gear, because without landing a hit, such power meant nothing. He felt sure that his current self would never lose to the version he once was. He rushed forward and slipped past every strike, then drove a blow into the robot's chest. After dodging a wide swing, he followed with another strike that dealt heavy damage and forced the robot backward. The crowd of viewers was stunned. Moments ago, they had seen Hayate being pushed back, but now the fight had completely turned around. An experienced player explained that Hayate was facing a copy of his old self. This meant he could read every move before it even happened. He He understood the instincts of the man he had been a year ago, the timing of each strike, and the moment when a weakness would appear. Because of this, he completely shut down the robot by predicting every action. Many viewers, however, were shocked to hear this, and doubted a normal human could think like a supercomputer. Hayate then kicked a broken blade from the ground and sent it flying toward the robot. The ease with which he handled the fight reminded everyone why he was known as Japan's strongest solo player. The robot blocked the chip blade, but it was only a distraction. Hayate appeared below it, and though the machine tried to defend, he shifted his movements and attacked from the sides to avoid another strike from its weapons. The viewers held their breath as Hayate closed the distance. He spun his body again and again, striking with his Hayate-style four-sword technique, four-revolution strike. His blows cut through the robot, and the stream erupted with cheers as the viewers celebrated his victory. Everyone watched as Hayate struck the robot with all his strength. Among them was the goddess, who panicked as she realized the fight had suddenly turned around. She rushed to her programmer for help. Sadaharu, already annoyed, asked what the problem was. The goddess clung to him and cried, saying that her ultimate boss monster had been winning moments ago but was now on the verge of defeat. Sadaharu thought that was impossible. He believed the boss monster had far better stats than even a level 5 dungeon boss, so there should have been no way for it to lose. Yet the goddess insisted she was telling the truth. When the programmer finally looked at the live dungeon feed, he screamed in shock at the sight of Hayate smiling as he fought. The goddess asked if that player was someone he knew. Sadaharu shouted that Hayate was more than just familiar. He was the very person whose movements they had copied when creating the special boss monster. The goddess could hardly believe it. Sadaharu then realized why the Tower of Black had been cleared so quickly. He had already suspected Hayate would eventually enter the dungeon, but he had not recognized it soon enough. The goddess asked who the kid really was. Sadaharu explained that Hayate was a solo player, famous as Japan's strongest. He was known as a genius of the four-sword style and had fully mastered the manipulator. While he spoke, Hayate sliced off the robot's arm, and the goddess almost screamed in fear. She could not believe that an ordinary-looking boy possessed such strength. She claimed he must have been using cheats. Sadaharu disliked hearing that, though he admitted Hayate's power was nearly on that level. He explained that Hayate's mind simply worked in a very unusual way. The goddess wondered if he was talking about the boy's hair, but Sadaharu clarified it was his brain. He explained that Hayate's brain was structured differently from most people. It was almost as if he had several smaller brains all working together as one. The goddess pictured a person with a strange, misshaped brain, but Sadaharu continued. Hayate could distinguish 10 voices speaking at once, solve fast math problems shown on 4 separate screens, watch 8 movies at the same time, and still recall every single plot. His ability to process multiple things at once was abnormally high. Sadaharu believed this came from Hayate's unique growth through constant training with the four-sword style. Thanks to that, he could control 4 arms with ease. He could make complex decisions in the middle of combat and perform moves that required the precision of threading a needle, making it look simple. In essence, Hayate was the ultimate multitasker. In gaming, players with his level of genius were extremely rare. The goddess then worried that her ultimate boss monster was being pushed back despite having powerful equipment. Sadaharu explained that the monster's data was already a year old, which made its stats weaker compared to the current Hayate. The goddess shook him in disbelief, asking what they should do since at this rate her dungeon would be considered easy once again. Suddenly they heard something break. The goddess turned to the screen and saw that Hayate had finally defeated the ultimate boss monster she had created. She could not believe what just happened. At that moment, Sadaharu revealed another problem. The program for the level 3 dungeon was still unfinished. If Hayate cleared the level 2 dungeon now, the event for the next dungeon's appearance would not start. The goddess began to panic and urged Sadaharu to finish it using his fighting spirit. Sadaharu explained that it was impossible because the level 3 dungeon was larger and more complex. The goddess even offered to do anything if he could make it work. Sadaharu reminded her that he had already warned her to wait until the level 5 systems were ready before launching the dungeons in the real world. But she had grown impatient and pushed it live anyway. The goddess insisted that she only wanted people to enjoy it, and she never thought someone would clear the dungeons this quickly. Sadaharu admitted that she had a point. The goddess then thought about making the current level 2 dungeon's boss monster stronger. Sadaharu was shocked that she wanted to stop the player from clearing the dungeon. The goddess explained that it would be a disaster if the dungeon was cleared now. The programmer answered that there was no time to upgrade the boss monster. The goddess suggested adding more monsters, but Sadaharu doubted that would work against Hayate. She then urged him to insert a special event that would force Hayate to leave, but Sadaharu questioned what she even meant by that. The goddess panicked as she struggled to come up with another idea. For the first time, she felt like her mind had run out of options. She needed to think of something fast. If the new dungeon did not appear, the game would no longer feel like an easy and fun challenge, but instead turn into a broken and disappointing one. Sadaharu noticed one of the goddess's notes and paused. He flipped through the pages until he came across a strange sketch. The scribble showed the goddess drawn as the final boss, a figure far too powerful to defeat. The goddess admitted that the drawing was exactly what she had in mind. She would become the final boss herself. To her, having the mastermind step into the stage as the last obstacle was a common theme in both games and anime, and she believed people usually enjoyed that kind of twist. But when she saw how carefully Sadaharu studied the drawing, her confidence wavered. She wondered if such an idea could even work. After staying silent for a moment, Sadaharu explained that he could technically prepare a version of the goddess's avatar to fight against Hayate. Still, he strongly warned against it. They had no way of knowing if the avatar could even handle the divine power of the goddess. More than that, it was nearly unheard of for a developer to directly step in and block a player's progress. If word spread that the goddess was secretly controlling the boss, the players would be furious, and the dungeons might lose all their challengers. Even so, there was no other clear way to stop Hayate. Sadaharu asked what choice the goddess would make. Since it was her dungeon, the decision belonged to her, and his role was simply to support her plan. The goddess finally decided. She asked again if this was the only way to stop Hayate from clearing the dungeon. When Sadaharu confirmed, she ordered him to prepare everything. He agreed and promised to start at once. The goddess, however, quietly worried that Hayate might think badly of her. Still, she swore that she would not let him advance any further. She promised that when it was all over, they would celebrate with a victory party, and she asked Sadaharu to handle the arrangements. Sadaharu gave a small sigh, realizing that his suggestions had only brought him more work. As the robot collapsed, Hayate fell to his knees while trying to catch his breath. A game screen appeared and confirmed that he had won the battle. He opened his inventory and a healing potion appeared. He drank it and let out a heavy sigh of relief afterward. He realized how close the fight had been. He felt lucky that it was only his past self he had faced, because fighting anything stronger would have been far worse. His sword had also broken. He had been careless. He never imagined that his fully reinforced iron sword would shatter. If that last strike had gone any deeper, he would have died on the spot. It was his fault for rushing in and ignoring the state of his gear. After seeing the strength of the mid-boss, he believed the main boss would be even stronger. Knowing how useless his current equipment had become, he started thinking about forging a weapon that could last for the long term. Meanwhile, inside the Tower of Spring in Washington, D.C., a squad of special forces entered the 7th floor with game-like weapons. In just an instant, they were completely destroyed by the same mid-boss that Hayate had just beaten. Soon, word spread online. Internet lurkers discovered that the U.S. Special Forces had been wiped out, and to make things worse, the same fake Hayate kept appearing. People could not believe how broken the goddess's game was. Some began asking what really happened to those who died inside the dungeon. A player of FUO mentioned that there was a rumor saying people did not truly die, but instead never regained consciousness. It was assumed that a feather of resurrection was needed, just like in the game. News reports confirmed that over 400,000 casualties had already been recorded worldwide. Authorities warned the public that these towers were not amusement parks and told people not to enter out of curiosity. The President of the United States was in panic, realizing there was no clear way to rescue his daughter. Rumors spread that even the Chinese and Russian armies had been destroyed. With the unbeatable fake Hayate blocking the way, everyone started to believe that the hostages could not be saved. At that moment, the world realized something shocking. Out of everyone alive, only one kid had the power to clear the Tower of Spring and save the hostages. That one person was Hayate. Hayate opened the shop and looked at the water-slaying blade. He paused because crafting it cost too much. The materials were easy enough to gather, but the crafting fee was far beyond what he had. He never imagined it would be this costly. He needed gear strong enough to face a level 5 threat, yet a full set of armor was nothing more than a dream for now. His only choice was to forge a few strong weapons and hope his current armor could last for the rest. People noticed how he was stuck because of money. Even with the income he made from streaming, many doubted a high school student could cover the cost. Everyone grew concerned but felt powerless to help. Then something unexpected happened. One viewer noticed a feature on the stream that had been ignored all this time. Moments later, Hayate received a notification showing a donation of 1,000 yen. That first alert did not stop. More notifications kept appearing, and his balance suddenly rose from 1,000 to 1,000,000. It turned out that the donation feature on the channel allowed viewers to send money directly to him. No one hesitated to give, and they sent their support along with messages of encouragement. Hayate was left speechless as the donations poured in. He realized in that moment that everyone had been watching and supporting him all along. At that moment, a donation of 5 billion yen appeared. Everyone was shocked by the massive amount. The money came from Elena's father. He declared it was the strength of the Shinonome group and wanted Hayate to accept it. He reminded Hayate that he was never fighting alone since everyone stood as his allies. He wished for them to become the swords on Hayate's back. Hearing this message made Hayate remember Elena's words about having friends among adventurers who would never abandon him. Hayate gave his thanks with a serious heart. Still, most of the viewers worried about the donation, since the amount was so large it could match the budget of a whole country. At the same time, Elena slowly regained awareness even though her eyes remained shut. She wondered where she had ended up. Her body felt cold. Darkness surrounded her. No sound reached her ears and she could not move at all. Fear filled her and she wished for someone to come and save her. The only person she could think of was Hayate. Then a giant door opened. Hayate entered, apologizing in his heart for being late. Wearing new gear, he stepped forward with confidence, determined to rescue Elena. Above him, he saw a crystal and the boss monster floating in the middle of a water stage. The boss showed surprise that Hayate had defeated her guardians and climbed to the top. She admitted he was stronger than she had thought and called him the hero of the future. Behind her, a crystal held Elena, drifting without motion. Hayate focused on Elena, who still looked unconscious. Hayate apologized for being late and turned his attention to the crystal behind the dungeon boss. He declared that he had come to rescue her. The viewers were shocked when they recognized the heiress. Since the final boss fight was about to begin, they all cheered for Hayate. Even though he could not hear them, their excitement filled the screens as they wished for the hostages to be saved. The dungeon boss of the Tower of Spring, Undine, greeted Hayate with arrogance. This startled both Hayate and the viewers. He had not expected the boss monster to be exactly like the one from the game, yet he still hoped it would behave in the same way. Undine began speaking with the tone of a final boss but stumbled over her lines in an awkward manner. Hayate and the viewers grew confused, wondering if the voice actor had been changed or if she had always spoken like that. Then one of the viewers noticed something strange and recognized the ridiculous voice. He realized the Undine before Hayate was actually the goddess herself. Undine flinched, pretending not to notice the comment, but more viewers quickly agreed. They believed the goddess had taken over the final boss to interfere with the battle. With her identity discovered, she had no choice but to admit it. She revealed that the Undine standing before them was none other than her own creation, Megumi the goddess. Her exposure came faster than she expected, almost like a speed run. She believed her overwhelming charisma had made it impossible to hide for long. She then explained that because of certain circumstances, she could not allow anyone to clear the Tower of Spring just yet. That was why she had descended in person to block Hayate's progress. Everyone remained stunned in silence, unable to process what had just happened. The goddess herself had appeared before them, and the revelation alone carried weight beyond belief. She declared that this was the kind of moment meant to raise the excitement, when the true mastermind revealed herself to personally challenge the hero's path. However, one of the viewers could not stand what the goddess had done. This left the goddess confused. A former gamer said his favorite Undine would never act that way. Another said Undine was supposed to be graceful and cool. Someone else could not believe the goddess had ruined Undine's image by misunderstanding her character. They all told her to leave, study the original story first, and stop ruining their favorite character. The goddess grew confused and wondered if she had really done something wrong since all the viewers were angry. Sadaharu then contacted her and suddenly apologized. He explained that Undine had a small but very unusual fan group because of her looks and personality. The goddess asked when this even started. One of the fans shouted that they had plenty to tell her, on top of complaining about the towers she dropped on them and the people she kidnapped. They also said the dungeons she created were a complete mess. They admitted she spoke about dreams and hopes, but nothing felt fun at all. That statement shocked the goddess. She wondered if her dungeon truly was not enjoyable. After that, everyone urged Hayate to defeat the foolish goddess and finally teach her a lesson. Hayate wanted to start right away, but first he needed to confirm something. He asked if Elena would be freed once he cleared the Tower of Spring by defeating the goddess. She admitted that it would happen, but only if he could truly defeat her. She felt angry that no one seemed to value the effort she had poured into building the dungeons. Just because there was one thing they disliked, they would complain and whine. She declared that she was furious, and wanted to show them what would happen when a goddess lost her patience. She even apologized in advance, saying she would not be holding back at all. To her, a fight where someone was meant to lose for the sake of the story was nothing unusual. She called it a scripted loss, something common in games, and without hesitation she summoned a massive wave. Everyone was stunned as the goddess, in her form as Undine, unleashed level 6 magic known as Tidal Wave. A towering tsunami charged toward Hayate with unstoppable force. One of the watchers explained that this was the highest class water attack that covered everything in its path, leaving no chance to escape. They accused the goddess of playing unfairly and wondered what Hayate would do now. As the rushing water closed in, Hayate remained calm. He raised his swords and swung with all his strength, cutting straight through the tsunami and splitting it apart. The goddess stood in disbelief at what she saw. Hayate declared that he did not care about her script or the idea of a forced defeat. He swore he would cut through anything in his way and strike her down. With firm resolve, he aimed his sword directly at her. Seeing the massive tidal wave split into two left the goddess and the viewers speechless. The goddess could not believe Hayate had done such a thing. He glared at her and raised his sword, while Elena stood behind the goddess in shock. Sadaharu, who had been watching the fight, realized that Hayate was holding the Suiten Zanka 2/6 style, a high-grade weapon with a special bonus against water enemies. With that kind of weapon, it was actually possible to slice through a tidal wave. What surprised Sadaharu even more was that Hayate already carried such a strong weapon at this stage. Strictly speaking, tidal wave was not an impossible attack to avoid. To prevent battles from being unwinnable, the programmers had designed every skill in the game with a hidden counter. For tidal wave, there was a small gap of only 2 frames that allowed a player to parry the huge wave. Hayate showed that he understood the game completely. Sadaharu started to think the game's rules no longer had any effect on him. At that moment, Hayate moved on the attack. The goddess shot streams of water bullets toward him. To counter, Hayate swung his left manipulator hand and released a sharp wave of air that knocked all the bullets away at once. The goddess was stunned that he could deflect them without touching them. She decided to step up her strength. She unleashed a level 6 spell called Aqua Breath Rods, and whirlpools spun wildly in every direction. Hayate quickly used the boots of the Black Silvervine clan, which gave him greater speed, and combined them with a magic item called Stepmaker. With them, he dodged the whirlpools by jumping across platforms in the air. The goddess then sent another spell named Bubble Swarm, but Hayate was ready. He used an item that gave him Guardian's Blessing along with an enchantment called Siren's Prayer, which shielded him completely. Seeing him unharmed, the goddess opened a gate and countless fishmen poured out like a flood. As they swarmed toward him, Hayate pulled out magic scrolls and released Lightning Thunder and Firestorm. The spells roasted the fishmen like meat on a grill. The goddess could not believe how many items he had prepared. Yet Hayate was still not finished. He used enchanted stones to boost his strength, defense, and speed. On top of that, he activated another magic scroll that filled the battlefield with a heavy smoke screen. The goddess grew annoyed when she could not see anything through the thick smoke. To clear it, she cast a strong water spell called Water Spout, which swept away all the smoke in an instant. When the air cleared, she was shocked to find that Hayate was nowhere in sight. She wondered where he had gone. At that moment, Hayate suddenly appeared behind her, already swinging his swords backward. The goddess reacted too late. Hayate unleashed his Hayate-style four-sword technique called Tensho Senkuzan. His attack tore through the goddess, forcing a scream of pain from her. The audience erupted with excitement. They cheered for Hayate, believing he was now unstoppable because of the money they poured into him. They shouted that pay to win was the best way forward and urged him to continue pressing the attack to defeat the goddess once and for all. But then Hayate stopped and questioned her ability. He pointed out that while her magic was powerful, using it without thought made it easy to counter. He revealed that he had memorized counters for every skill in the game. With the endless support of the audience providing him resources, he explained that she had no chance of winning at her level of play. The goddess was stunned by his boldness. She was the creator of the dungeon, yet this challenger acted as if she could be beaten like any other foe. She quickly regenerated her body and declared that items, skills, and techniques no longer mattered. A ball of water formed in her palm, and she declared it proof that her true power was beyond the limits of the game. The ball grew into an enormous sphere of water so massive that even the veterans watching were left unsettled. In the game records, such a spell did not exist. She revealed it was not a programmed skill but her raw divine power. The water mass weighed tens of thousands of tons, and she proclaimed that Hayate could not escape its crushing force. Its overwhelming size left no room for dodging, and since it existed outside the knowledge of the game, there could be no counter prepared against it. She chose to rely on absolute mass and power to finish the battle. With a wave of her hand, she hurled the massive water sphere toward Hayate, daring him to rely on his so-called player skill to survive the incoming strike. Hayate felt completely shocked when he saw the goddess release such an overwhelming attack. The players who witnessed it quickly called her a cheater. They could not believe she truly used her divine powers to interfere. The goddess then sent out a massive wave of water that flooded the entire room while keeping herself safe behind her shield. Hayate formed a 5-layered barrier using an item known as the Guardian's Blessing. He tried his best to hold on and block the crushing waves, but he soon realized it was hopeless. His barrier cracked and the water smashed against the floor with a heavy impact. The viewers panicked and cried out his name. In moments, the floor was completely covered with water and Hayate disappeared from sight. The crowd sat in shock. The goddess raised her hand and pulled the water together, forming a giant sphere. She widened her eyes in surprise when Hayate appeared again, still alive and gasping for air. Everyone watched with anxious hearts as he struggled to breathe. The goddess wondered if his survival came from his powerful gear or rare items. She also wondered how long he could keep enduring her strikes. She no longer cared if it took dozens or even hundreds of attacks. She had already decided to keep pressing forward until he finally gave up. She launched another attack. Some viewers grew frightened and stopped watching the stream while others stayed with courage, even though they saw Hayate being pushed to his limits. A few asked why he was not cutting the attack apart like he once did with the tidal wave. Others answered that it was impossible because of the sheer size of the sphere. Some begged the goddess to stop. One player even shouted that she was a cheat and claimed the fight had turned into something far beyond a normal game. Hayate drew in sharp breaths as the goddess once again pulled the water together for another strike. The goddess called him helpless and showed what power someone like her could use. She admitted that Hayate was impressive, yet she reminded him that even with talent, he still carried the limits of being human. She revealed that he was facing the true creator of the dungeon, and the battle had already ended before it could even begin. She offered to spare his life if he gave up and returned home. She explained that it would cause problems if Hayate cleared the dungeon at that moment, and if he waited a week or two, she would allow him to finish it like any other player. She asked him to leave quietly and return home. The viewers sided with her. They urged Hayate to retreat for now. They admitted that the goddess might act foolish, but she was still a god, and no human could hope to win against that. Many repeated the same thought, telling Hayate to step back since he had already achieved more than enough. They reasoned that they could always return later for the hostages, and asked him to surrender this time. Surprisingly, Hayate was still smiling. The goddess and the others could not believe he managed to keep a smile in such a serious situation. He expected that a goddess would naturally hold great power, and he thought it was incredible. Yet he also wondered if this was truly the strongest attack she could use. His words left the goddess confused. Hayate thought her power was wasted if all it could do was summon a huge drop of water. With more imagination and refinement, she could have formed a technique that was far greater. He believed she would never defeat him with something so rough and incomplete. The crowd of viewers held their breath as they watched closely. Hayate then spoke of showing the power of what many had called a defective skill, one that people said was not worth learning. He had trained in it endlessly, even when everyone told him to give up. He explained that strong weapons, rare items, special skills, and powerful equipment were all valuable, but true strength came from somewhere else. It came from polishing what someone loved until it shined like no other. He knew that if his control failed, the damage could turn against him and be massive. Even so, he was willing to release it, even in the real world. At last, he chose to use his Hayate-style four-sword secret art called Oboro. As soon as he prepared, his manipulators vanished from sight while he crouched ready to strike.